Marketer of the Day, episode 600, The Magical Profit-Producing Power of Following Up, Being Organized, and Persistent. 22 things I learned from Grant Cardone about wealth, mental health, happiness, knowledge, and making money.
Hey everyone, this is Robert Plank. My website is robertplank.com. Welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. But don't get your hopes up too much. We do not have Grant Cardone for an interview today, but we are talking about him. We're going to talk about some of his ideas, some of his books. I hope that's okay. If someone from your office is listening, Grant, we have only good things to say about you. And the reason why it's really important that you hear what I have to say today and why you need to know about this Grant Cardone guy is because you're probably listening to this podcast because you're either thinking of starting a business or you're growing a business, and it needs to have more traffic. It needs to charge more. It needs to have better customers. You need more reach. You need to get more done throughout the day. And the answer to all of those things is more sales, to be better at selling, to be more proactive, to break out of your shell. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, I've been really surprised at how many people have been willing to hop on the podcast to slum it with me. So, for example, we had John Lee Dumas from Entrepreneur on Fire on the show. You can check him out at marketeroftheday.com/588. And I know that one of Grant's buddies, Mitch Russo, was an early guest, which is marketeroftheday.com/118. And the thing about a lot of these guys is some of these people have just their days packed full of hopping on podcasts. And to be honest, when I switched this show to an interview format 2 years ago, I reached out to Katie Shaw at Grant's office, and they said, oh, he's booked for the year. And then I kept following up. But honestly, at this point, I think he's way too big for me unless I paid some kind of huge appearance fee or unless I was able to show huge traffic numbers, prove to himself some way. So for now, I'm backburnering that. And instead of trying to get him as a guest, we're going to talk about his books, which you should check out. I think his best book is called The 10X Rule. And then the book that first turned me on to him was called Sell or Be Sold. And he has a bunch. And the thing about him is he makes things really simplistic. He narrates his own audiobooks. And I recommend that you buy his books on Audible. I think that's the best way to listen to him because he sometimes goes off on tangents in a good way, especially when he's reading his book and he says, let me just take off on this one concept. And so I first heard about Grant Cardone from my business partner, Lance Tomashiro. I was kind of laid up. I had recently broken my ankle, was kind of on the mend, and I had some free time. I had time to rethink my business, think big picture, read books, and then my business partner said, well, check out this guy, Grant Cardone. And I think he bought some package of a lot of his audiobooks, and I bought his stuff on Audible anyway. But a lot of it was about reaching out to your customers and making those little touches and basically pushing yourself to do more and think in an abundance mindset. So the 10X Rule is probably, I think, his best book, but he has Facebook live streams and he is freaking everywhere. And the lesson I got from that, there's a bunch of lessons today, but 80% of life is just showing up. You might have heard of that. And how many of you out there, maybe this is you, where you have a really good idea, but for some reason, you just haven't pulled the trigger. You haven't made the phone call. You haven't finished the website. And showing up means actually getting outside of your own comfort zone. And that means, making meetings, hopping on other people's podcasts. And it doesn't always just mean cranking out the content. It doesn't necessarily mean cranking out the blog posts or the YouTube videos, because I keep seeing this trend with some clients and customers and people like that, where they say, well, I'm really working hard on content. I say, well, what are you doing? They say, here's my blog. And I see a blog, but I don't see it being promoted on social media. They say, I'm cranking out the videos. I go look on their YouTube channel. They have 10 subscribers and a ton of their videos have no views, 1 view, 2 view. So maybe if this is you and you're devoting X number of minutes or hours per day to cranking out the content, maybe think about hopping on other people's shows, podcasts especially. And if you want to be on my show, shoot me an email, robert@robertplank.com. I don't take anyone, but if you have something interesting, something unique, an app, a website, a service, and you think it's worth mentioning, which I think it is, then hop on. And even if you want to chat about Grant Cardone, well, then hop on. So 80% of life is showing up, and there are things that are easy for you now that used to be difficult. And through practice, repetition, ramping up, you were able to build the muscle. So I hear about people saying, well, I can't do 3 podcast episodes in a row because my throat will hurt. Well, build the muscle, get better about talking more often. Or people who say, I can't put X number of hours into my business. Well, the more you do it, the easier it'll be. All right, so the reminder for today is that you know how sometimes you are trying to get a computer program or an app or a website to work for you, and there's some sort of error message? Well, a really common thing I see is that people say, oh, well, my website won't work. This plugin won't work. And I go and look, and I see what the error message is. I highlight it, I copy it into Google, and then I find the answer. So I think that a real disconnect that we're seeing is that people treat website error messages, computer error messages as spam. And then when they come and they leave a support ticket for our software, or I see them asking for help on a YouTube or a Facebook group, then they'll just say, oh, there's an error, it doesn't work. I'm like, but what is the error? And if you copied that error message into Google, then you'd probably find the answer. So a real life practical example of this is that I am subscribed to my own email list, which you should be subscribed to your own list. You should be subscribed to my list too. You can opt in at robertplank.com/free. But what happened was I opened my own email, and I also email every single day. I learned that from Mike Filsame. Send an email to your list every day if possible. And even if you can't do that once a week is fine. But I opened up my own email and I clicked a link, and then it said, warning, you're going to a dangerous site. And I thought, oh no, what did Google throw into the mix this time? And it wasn't one of those red screen error messages. It was just clicking off of Gmail. So I looked at the exact error message. I copied it into Google, and it turned out that I had to fill in a special form for, if I linked to my website from Gmail, I had to say, like, let me verify that I'm Robert Plank and that I own this site and that it's not a scary site. So I verified, and then after a couple of hours, the error went away. So what a concept. You see an error message, don't throw it out, but copy it or write down what it is. And that way, when you ask for help, assign it to your virtual assistant, search to solve it yourself, you have a starting point. You know what exact problem that you are solving. So the next thing is, are you stuck on a task? Is there something that's really important for you, like setting up that web page or sending an email to that client, and you just haven't been able to do it? Well, here's a really way to get something done. Write down the smallest of tasks. If there's something that you haven't done in the last 4 or 5 days, and you say, you know what, I could do it, well, then you still haven't. So how about take things way back to the basics and write down those simple micro steps and do them so that you aren't juggling the now and the then in your head. And so there's been times when I've just been so blocked, and we all have that. I've been so blocked where I had to make a web page, I had to write a headline on the web page, I had to put something on the button, and I just couldn't do it. So what did I do? I took out a piece of paper and I wrote, write headline, make blank web page, put text on button, and then I actually did it. So that's, even though it seems really, really simple on the surface, if you can't get something done, write down the small steps on a piece of paper and then do it, so that way you know exactly what it is that you're doing, and you'll have fun crossing out or checking off those things. So here's my thought of the day is, do you want it enough? If you're shy about getting yourself on other podcast shows, if you're shy about Facebook live streaming, or if you're shy about contacting those one-on-one clients, well, do you want it enough? And is you wanting it, does that outweigh the hesitation, the shyness of you not doing it? Well, if not, you need to find a way to tip those scales, because you get what you tolerate. And if you keep on doing what you're doing, you're going to get the same old results. And that was the mentality that I was in when I first jumped into some of this Grant Cardone stuff. And when I sometimes write out postcards to customers, I call customers. When I switched this podcast to an interview format, I thought to myself, I could just keep doing solo episodes like I'm doing right now, and I still do some of those, but if I did 100% solo episodes, it would just be the same old mediocrity. Gotta get out there, got to surround myself with better people, and not just be stuck in my own bubble with my own thinking, ignoring anyone else's stuff. So let's talk about Mr. Grant Cardone, the creator, the inventor, the coiner of the 10x rule. And I have 22 things that I want to list out that I learned from his books and things like that. And he's the creator of this 10x rule. And let me just jump off on that. That's number one. And then I'll list out all 22 because like sometimes I'll listen to like a Tony Robbins tape or something and he'll be like, here's these 6 things. And I'm like halfway through like, wait, what's number 3? Because I just wish I had like a recap of all of them, then unpack them, then recap them all. So first thing, number one, the 10x rule. Here's what it means, because sometimes people say, oh, you should 10x that. And sometimes people miss out on what it actually means. Here's what it means, is that goal that you have right now, first of all, you need to 10x that goal, right? So if you want your business to make $100,000 this year, then you need to change that goal to $1 million this year. And then you figure out, okay, now I need to figure out what activity do I need to do to make that happen? And then you think about, okay, now what activity, before my goals were too low, because if I set my goal to something, I might not always hit it, right? It's sort of like in baseball, if the ball's coming at you and you swing the bat, and if you stopped the bat right where you hit the ball, you'd slow down until you hit the ball. You'd bunt it, you'd barely tap it. But if you swing through it, then you apply the necessary force to make it happen. Same thing with, I've never taken karate, but my understanding it's the same idea where like you punch through the thing. So you have that goal, you 10x that goal, so you change from $100,000 a year to $1 million a year. Then you map out what it would take, who you have to hire, what kind of numbers you need to put in to get the output that you want. And then you 10x that activity as well. So in a way, you're 100xing yourself. So you 10 times the income goal, and then you 10 times the activity goal for that. And the reason is because life happens. There's Murphy's Law, there's attrition. And a lot of people think, for example, in my world, a lot of people think, okay, well, if I have a list of 1,000 people, well, then I can easily get half of them on a webinar and I can easily get half of them to buy. But in reality, the real world is pretty cruel. The numbers are not that nice to you. In reality, you're going to have that list of 1,000 people, and maybe 100 will register for your webinar. Maybe 40 will even show up, and maybe 5 will buy. And because you were a little too optimistic about things, you didn't put in the work that was necessary to really go for it. And whenever I jump in and listen to sales podcasts or read books on selling, things like that, this is a huge thing. You got to have your quota. You got to surpass your quota, because if you do that bare minimum, you're going to get less than the bare minimum as a result. So the 10x rule, 10x your income goal, and then 10x the activity to even make it to that income goal. So let me just list the 22 things of Grant Cardone. We'll unpack some of them. Number 1, the 10x rule. Number 2, get your money right. Number 3, have a quiet workspace. 4, you don't know if too much is too much until you've done it. 5, grocery store rot. Keep that money pouring in constantly. 6, you're always selling, whether it's in a job, career, a webinar, a class, so surpass that quota. 7, be the most ethical person you know. 8, most of us are introverted or shy, but be social even if you're introverted. Make those thank you calls. 9, daily meetings, quotas, measured progress. Get into the habit of completion. 10, most people don't follow up. There's a couple of funny stories I heard from Grant. One is that someone was angry and annoyed at him that Grant left something like 36 voicemails on his phone, but Grant said, well, you still might buy. So I thought that was kind of funny. 11, don't wait to get your ducks in a row before taking action. Just start dialing or contacting. 12, get omnipresence. Market yourself in so many places that people can't ignore you. 13, ramp up as your skill and efficiency improves. Cardone is kind of a Gary Vee type to some people. He puts out motivational videos. and they're really slick. He has a fancy camera. It's high production quality. But you go back and you look at some of his early stuff when he had kind of longer hair, and he'd say, "I just came out of the Lowe's here in blah 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 city, and a sales associate didn't come to me," and he would just sometimes pull up his phone and make a quick vlog. And then he hooked up with his buddy Brad Lee from Lightspeed VT at one point, and then his production quality got really good because he got good at creating the content itself. He didn't let the fanciness, the technology get in the way. And then once the speaking, the cranking out the videos, the having ideas, the being catchy was easy, then it became time to ramp up that production quality. Number 14, be difficult and ask for what you want. 15, ask questions from prospects, mirror them, always agree. He has a great story about buying a laptop we'll unpack. 16, fill in so much in your schedule that the weeds can't grow. If you're always moving forward, if you're always working, you don't have time to be unhappy. It sounds kind of sick, but I think it'll make sense once we explain it. 17, be so busy that you haven't even had time to watch your favorite TV show in weeks. You might have heard that successful people have a big library, unsuccessful people have a big TV set. So you need, if you want to waste a bunch of time, if you want to waste your life, watch a bunch of TV. I haven't had live TV since 2004. I'd never go back. I don't need that time suck. And people talk about not having TV, but that saying really stuck with me, that if you don't even have time to watch TV, you're on the right track. You're doing more important stuff. 18, work weekends. Don't take them off like everyone else does. 19, write down your goals in the morning and at night. Even if you've written them again and again, this is a think and grow rich kind of thing. Make your imagination work for you. 20, if you have multiple jobs or streams of income, be looking for those complementary skills. And so this really hits home for me in a couple of ways. One is that back when I had a day job a decade ago, I was learning to be a computer programmer. And then I used those skills to create plugins, to create courses, to create websites. And we sometimes teach voiceover artists how to make money as freelancers. And then they can move up to becoming podcast editors or coaches or producers or narrate audiobooks or things like that. So there's always that possibility, especially in this day and age with the internet, things moving so fast. You learn a skill for one job, let's say, and then when you have another task or another job, you can apply that somewhere else. And there's no shame in you doing the work yourself at first and then systematizing it and delegating it out. Number 21, are you discouraged because someone hasn't called you back? Well, this really hit home for me because how many times have I failed to call someone back and I meant to, I wanted to, just life got in the way, so call again. And number 22, even if they hate you, they're still talking about you. So just be yourself. All right, so now let's unpack some of these. So number 1 of 22, we said apply that 10x rule. Number 2, get your money right. If there's something that's holding you back, if you're in a lot of debt, then buckle down those few months, do the Dave Ramsey stuff, do whatever you got to do for those few months. So that way you get the second job, you get the freelancing, but clear out those dang distractions, clear out the debt. Grant is really good about this thing called house hacking. And if you haven't heard of this, it's basically if you live by yourself in a huge house, you're wasting money. You need to get roommates, you need to rent it out, you need to get a duplex, a triplex. That way you can make your money work for you. And I can't remember which book, maybe it was Be Obsessed or Be Average, where he talked about how he made his money. Because he's like a multi-millionaire, thousands of properties. And my understanding, maybe I'm getting this wrong, my understanding was that when he was in his 20s, he was a car salesman and he needed to differentiate himself. So what he did was he met with clients who could only meet late at night. And the other employees of the car dealership didn't want to bother, but he did. And he got all these extra clients, all these extra sales he wouldn't have made otherwise. He reached out, made phone calls, did all kinds of the going the extra mile sorts of activities. And my also understanding is that he had his base salary go into a bank account that he could not touch. So he was dependent on his commissions to even make rent. So he had this money going off in this bank account, but he had to negotiate with his landlord to pay the rent a little late on some months because he depended on that commission because that was the money he could actually access. So why would you do something as silly as that? Why would you lock your money away? Well, again, remembering years ago, trying to remember the story right, but I think he saved up enough money to buy a big apartment complex, like 46 units. Maybe that's not big. I don't know anything about real estate. I'm just Robert Plank. But he bought this 46 unit property and then rented out all these units. And then when he was like, and this was like late 20s and then early 30s, he had made all the money from the renting, plus the property value had increased, sold it, made a few $1,000,000, and then built from there. Now he teaches automotive sales, he teaches phone sales, he does all these media appearances, but he also has tons of real estate properties, rental properties all over the dang place. So he's making money every which way. And when everyone else says, just focus on one little thing, he's making it work. He's not spread too thin, but he's firing off on all cylinders. And there's a lot of that money coming in that you don't necessarily see. So get your money right. Get out of that debt. Get that cushion. That way you're not always distracted by money. That way you're not limited by the money you don't have. That way you can hire who you need to hire. And to be honest, I'm doing better and better at letting go of the control, at doing more delegating. As I get older, as I'm in my early 30s, I'm getting more of my head wrapped around this idea that you can get the money back, you can't get the time back. So you need to hire people to get things done faster. And speaking of that, speaking of getting things done faster, have a quiet workspace. If you're working from home, if you have your kids screaming, running in and out of the room, that's not good. You're not going to have the focus that you need. So at the very least, have a home office. But Grant recommends you rent an office space outside of your home. That way you can be in work mode when you're there and get employees. And in this day and age, there's no excuse not to get employees. With the freelancer sites, with the virtual workers, you can build a team. You don't have to go through all the rigmarole you used to have to go through decades ago. Have that quiet workspace, rent an office, get employees. That's number 3. Number 4, this is one of my favorite Grant sayings, and I don't even know if he has this in his list, in his quote file, but it's that you don't know if too much is too much until you've done it. And if you're like most entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs, you've probably been told your whole life to be careful while you're doing so much. And that's a good thing. And I first, this really clicked with me maybe about a year ago, because maybe about a year ago, I began to take my networking seriously again. I realized that I'd spent a couple of years just sticking to myself and I had to get out there more. And when I got out there, I said I had to have this podcast. And right now, this is episode 600. But even when it was on 200 or 300 episodes, people were kind of aghast, if that's a word. Their jaw sort of dropped when I said I have hundreds of episodes. And that's good. That's a way to stand out, because not everyone has that many episodes. There are people with way more episodes than me even still, but you need to be someone that does too much. I have tons of products, tons of courses, tons of blog posts, tons of podcast episodes, and I'm not just cranking them out for the heck of it. I do promote those things. I do that whole Pat Flynn thing of spend 20% of your time on your content, 80% of your time marketing it. And I mean, if you subscribe to some of Grant's stuff, you're going to end up subscribing to multiple things, because he has a show almost every day of the week where he live streams. He is live streams on Instagram. He does little Facebook live streams. He's all over the place. Sometimes it's almost too much. He's live streaming all the time, but that needs to be you as well, because now his face is recognized all over the place. So you don't know if too much is too much until you've done it. Fight that obscurity. Now, Grant, for number 5 here, he explained a concept called grocery store rot. So he used to work at a grocery store. And you know, when you walk into any grocery store in America, there are these beautiful displays and pyramids of all the apples and pyramids of all the oranges. But then you buy some fruit and you take it home and you eat a couple of apples, you wait a few days, and the rest of the apples are rotting. So a lot of people don't realize, I guess, much how much churn there is, right? How many new, fresh, beautiful vegetables need to be put in there, and then you take the old rotting ones out constantly. And so the imaginary lesson there, the visual lesson, is to feed that beast, to keep the traffic, the clients, the business, and the money pouring in constantly. You can't rest on your laurels. You can't stop building the list. You can't stop broadcasting, because if you do, well, then things are going to begin rotting. And then the next thing you know, you're like, where'd all my money go? Where'd all my traffic and my clients go? So keep on cranking that engine. Keep reinvesting the money back into the business, and keep putting a lot of the legwork, a lot of the activity. And so when I first heard of Grant and started listening to his stuff, I realized something that, I had a friend from a bunch of years ago who really hated his own customers. And it scared me somewhat, because he had this disdain for his customers. He was like, oh, they don't buy anything. They're so lazy. They don't do anything. And I was like, geez, I hope I don't get that cynical. And some of Cardone's books said to do things like make some phone calls, send some handwritten postcards, do at least some sort of a little bit of manual labor each day. Even if it's, like what I used to do a lot of was record a quick 30-second, 60-second video. And I was talking to a client the other day who does this sort of thing. And I thought, oh yeah, that's something that works so well, I stopped doing it. So keep things coming in constantly. Now, number 6, and this really relates, is that you're always selling, right? And so people always think of, oh, you're a cheesy salesman, and they want to stay away from that sort of stuff. And you know what? I'm a computer programmer, and when I was late teens, early 20s, trying to sell products, I was really bad at it. I'm still pretty bad at it, but I was trying to sell products, and I wasn't doing a very good job because I told myself, oh, I'm just a programmer. I'm not a marketer. I don't need to do any of those fancy sales tricks. But you know what? As soon as I learned how to present on stage, how to present on a webinar, then guess what? I played the game a little bit, and then I got the attention that I wanted, and then people actually listened and paid attention and got excited and got drawn in and bought things from me, because I learned that little bit of selling, of meeting people where they're at, of making sure to tap into the emotions, the fears, the frustrations, to have something catchy, to repeat myself for effect, to maybe slow down, because sometimes I have a problem making sure that things are slowed down so that you can appreciate what I'm talking about. So you're always selling, and this applies in a lot more places than you think. You're always selling, and not necessarily when you're trying to close that sale on the phone or on a webinar or something, but just think about, let's say you're not full-time yet. Or let's say that you have no interest in being full-time, right? There's no shame in working as the internet marketer for some huge company or working on commission or something. But let's say that you applied for one of those jobs. Well, you have to sell yourself, right? You have to make that fancy resume and go in on that fancy interview. And even when you're climbing the ladder in your career, you're still selling yourself. I can definitely relate to this, because I'll be selling a course on a webinar. And then when I have that paid course, that class, what am I doing? I'm selling people on continuing through, on watching all the video, on continuing and watching the other modules, on actually implementing some of these things in their courses. So if I have a course called Podcast Crusher that teaches people how to make a podcast, I have a course called Membership Cube that teaches people how to make a membership site. So even after someone buys, I'm still selling them on going through the content, implementing, buying the next thing. So you're always selling. Don't forget that. Number 7, be the most ethical person you know. And again, the whole concept of being ethical versus being a cheesy, slimy salesman, those things aren't mutually exclusive, right? If you bust your tail to write that book, make the app, make the product, and no one knows about it, then you're being unethical because you're not helping them. You're not getting yourself out there. So being ethical means telling as many people about your product, because it's unethical to not help them. it's unethical to not sell it to them. So I thought that was an interesting concept. Be the most ethical person you know. Number 8, are you introverted? Are you shy? Well, most of us are. And the difference between those people who let it get the best of them and those who push forward anyway is just that it's not even that you waited until you got motivated or waited until the fear passed or waited until your attitude changed. You went ahead and you did it anyway. So be social even if you're introverted. Make those thank you calls or send those postcards to customers. And what really helps, which I added to the mental swipe file from Grant's thing, is he says, well, he is always looking who he can have lunch with in town, right? Who he can just network, just to chit chat, just to socialize. And his line, I love this. He says he'll make some phone calls, and it might be calling people who like he had an idea about their business or thought about them that day. And he says, well, such and such canceled on me for lunch. Let's have lunch. So that way it's really low key. He's not being pushy. Just like, oh yeah, plans fell through. Let's go have lunch. So I've been using that. I'm continuing to use that. I really like that. Number 9, daily meetings and quotas. Make that measured progress. Don't let things go away from you for days or weeks. If you're unhappy with the traffic that you're getting, then you probably haven't reached out to enough people. And if you haven't reached out to enough people, it's probably because you let too much time pass between doing something every day. It's hard to go from nothing to something, but if you're doing even a little bit every day, it's easy to incrementally get better. And that applies to you and to your team as well. So if you're really serious about making these phone calls, about contacting these customers, these prospects, then do a little meeting every single day just to see what the progress is, because it's not always about hitting huge numbers, which is great, but getting into that habit of completion of you set this doable goal, you hit it, you set this doable goal, you hit it, you keep on enlarging, expanding the goal, and then you keep on hitting your results. That's way healthier than saying, I'm going to hit this huge goal, I'm not going to hit it. Set this huge goal, not going to hit it. Because then you fall into cognitive dissonance, right? That means that the things that you say, the things that you plan do not match up, do not link up with what you're doing. Next thing you know, you're not taking it seriously and it's not working. So have those daily meetings. And me and my business partner have begun contacting local businesses in the area. We started using a CRM, a customer relationship management system. And we set a twice a week meeting in the calendar. Just sometimes it's just 5 minutes just to see what our numbers are, just to make sure that we're hitting our numbers, that we're contacting the amount of people that we want to contact, we're making the number of sales we want to, because otherwise it's easy for the time to get away from you. And speaking of CRMs and spreadsheets, somewhere in there in one of those books, Grant said, don't wait to get your ducks in a row before taking action. Just start dialing, just start contacting. You can figure it out later, but don't let that tool get in the way. I mean, use a pen and paper if you have to, but just start dialing, just start with that activity. And speaking of that activity, omnipresence. Mark yourself in so many places that people can't ignore you. In one of his early books, Grant mentioned, I don't even remember what platform it was. It was, I don't know if it was as Periscope or something like that, but if there's a new social media platform out there, he's all over it. Why? Because he wants to be one of the early adopters so that when it actually does blow up, then everyone else is playing catch up. So if the next Twitter, the next Facebook, the next MySpace comes along, if it's easy enough for you to become in the top 1 or top 10 or top 100 on that platform, just because not everyone else is using it, why not post some videos there, post some content there? What's really great about Grant's LinkedIn page is that he posts a LinkedIn article 5 days a week. And I make sure to post every couple of months, but geez, 5 days a week, that is a well-oiled machine. And I'm sure that, and what I've noticed also is that the posts on his LinkedIn polls are curated from his live stream. So he'll do a live stream, he'll do a show, he'll do he does a real estate show, he does just a selling in general kind of show, and he does a relationship thing with him and his wife Elena. And I'll notice that he might kind of go off on a tangent or tell some story in one of those streams. And then a few days later, that story will be one of his LinkedIn posts. So I'm pretty sure that he just does a live stream and then has a writer or a team of writers go and write the LinkedIn posts based on that. And then I'm sure that they have a little bit of a buffer. They get it all done ahead of time. And then that way there can be 5 postings per week, which is like kind of the same content that he streamed on his live stream, but people missed it. People needed the reinforcement. People learn in different ways. So he's in so many places just from doing that work once. And number 13, ramp up your skill as your efficiency improves. We started the show by talking about that muscle. And this makes me think of back in school when we'd be off for summer vacation and come back to school. It was really hard to write an essay. It was really hard to even write a quick assignment versus if you're writing every day, that muscle's strong. It doesn't necessarily have to apply to writing. It can apply to your speaking, your selling, your productivity, but ramping up is the key word here. So that might mean if you're doing the daily LinkedIn posts or the daily vlogs, think about how you can increase your output. So I'm working with a client right now, or just in talks for him to maybe become a client, where he has a podcast and he's releasing 4 podcast episodes per month, but he wants to produce 6 per month. So that way he's getting further and further ahead in the schedule. And I don't write as much as I used to. I'm doing more of the podcasting now, but I love getting that runway super long. That way I can take a little bit of a break and focus on other stuff while the content plays out. And I used to write 2 blog posts back to back. I'd write a blog post for publishing now, and then I'd go and write blog post number 2, schedule it for in a week from now. And then in a week from now, I'd write the blog post for a week from then, so I'm already ahead, and then write blog post number 2 for 2 weeks from then. And that was a really good habit to ramp up to because I kept getting further and further ahead. And then I can focus my efforts on not blogging, but on promoting those blog posts, on sending the broadcast emails, on making the courses, on pitching the courses on webinars, on getting affiliates from joint ventures. So you see how once you can get ahead of the calendar, once you can either delegate or automate or all the above, you can focus your efforts on marketing. Number 14. Here's a weird one, but I love how there's a practical example in this. Be difficult and ask for what you want. And so Grant says that he was at a restaurant once and he wanted a soda. And they brought him a soda. He's like, no, I want it in the can because I like the aluminum taste. And I thought that was really funny because that's an interesting exercise for anyone to try, right? Because you can say, well, I'm being a little difficult, but I'm not being like a super picky eater and sending my food back or whatever just because there's 1 grain too much of salt on there. But you say, I want a soda. I want it in a certain way. I'm not going to compromise. And I'm not even being too much of a hassle here. I'm just saying, don't bother pouring the soda into a glass. Just give me the soda in a can. So that's a really fun exercise. If you've been settling too much in your life or going with the flow or not getting what you want, then maybe that can be a quick win for you. Ask for the soda in the metal can, for example, if that's what you like. Number 15, ask questions from prospects. It's really tempting and easy to dish out all the features, and I've been doing better at meeting people on the phone. I make sure to meet with someone at least once a week, probably a handful of times a week now, whether it's someone who wants to do business with me or someone who wants to work with me in some capacity, someone who has an idea. Instead of them writing something out, usually I'm like, let's just get on the phone. Let's just talk for 5-10 minutes and give me your idea. And then I'll say, I'll think about it. Or maybe I'll agree right then. Or maybe we'll just chit chat and catch up and get some ideas and talk about what we're doing. Like, there's no harm in getting that inner circle in talking to some of your buds on the phone in that way. But then sometimes when someone comes to me with an idea for a course, they say, here's all my things. Mark, I want to be this. This is this. And I kind of tune out for about 5 minutes. I say, okay, like, I guess it's good to get the whole picture and dish out all your stuff. But I mean, I don't need that much information. I can probably make a decision in just 30, 60 seconds. And so Grant told some story where he went in to buy a laptop. And again, I'm probably saying this wrong, but whatever. Buy his book, 10X Rule, grantcardone.com. So he went into a Best Buy sort of retail establishment. He just wanted a computer. And the guy was going off about DVD writers and processors and RAM and gigahertz and gigabytes. And he was like, I just want a computer to do some spreadsheets and watch some videos and check some email. So he left not buying anything. Then he went to some other store, maybe another kind of Best Buy sort of store. So that way we're not disparaging a Best Buy store. And he said, well, I want a laptop. And the guy was like, all right, well, are you a beginner user or a power user? Do you want top of the line something, or what are you going to use this for? And the person just asked a couple of questions and then tailored the choice of the laptop down to one or two. So instead of saying, blah, 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 here's 50 choices, he asked a couple of questions, narrowed things down, and then said, here is the laptop for you. So there's something to that. There's something to asking some questions, genuinely being interested in the answer, listening, and then giving someone a choice based on what they told you. There's a little bit there of a micro commitment, a little bit of a back and forth. And could someone have narrowed down one of 50 choices? Maybe, but it's a way more efficient process of asking a couple of questions, and then now you can throw out 90% of the stuff you were going to dish out. Maybe that person was interested in gigahertz and gigabytes, or maybe they just said, I just want it for X task. And so there's something to be said about asking some questions and just kind of agreeing with them. Don't fight them, but agreeing in whatever capacity, and mirroring, which means that if they talk in a certain way, or if they keep gravitating to certain subjects or keywords, don't fight it. Just go with the flow. Meet people where they're at. Number 16. Now this group of lessons here, as we're getting near the end, gets into sort of the being a workaholic in a good way. So here's the first one and this is crazy, and I'm still not at this point yet, but Grant can somehow schedule 15-minute blocks of time, which I just think is crazy. I don't know how anyone would do that, but that, I guess that is something for us all to aspire to. And the reason is that you fill so much in your schedule that the weeds can't grow. I think he calls it St. Augustine grass, where the grass is so thick that the weeds can't grow through it. So that way you're always busy. And I don't know if you've noticed, but if you have a lot of time off, maybe if you were on summer break, or you were between jobs, or you got laid off, or you were on like a long vacation or something, but it's really easy for those bad thoughts to creep in if you don't have something to do. And I mean, I've noticed that I've always been working on stuff. And even if I'm just relaxing, I might be writing a book or reading something, but I'm always working on something. A lot of people think they need to, relax and recharge their batteries. And if you need to go on vacation and think about the next move in your business, sure, but you're always working, right? You're always eating and breathing and moving and sleeping. So you don't necessarily need time off. If you're not passionate about stuff, if you're burned out with your business, maybe you need to change directions, sure, but don't think that time off is going to make you happier. Fill so much in your schedule that the weeds can't grow. And there are plenty of things that you can put in your schedule that are fun, that are productive, that'll make you money, that'll grow your business, but fill up that schedule, and that way you'll get a lot more things done. And then you can switch gears and so-called take a break, but what you could do is, for example, fill up that calendar with podcast interviews, with sales calls, with meetings for a few weeks to really hit it hard, and then maybe take a month off or take a few weeks off. But that month off might then be to go off on that vacation to write that book or to plan out that course. But don't think that you can just have all that open space and that you'll instantly be happier. So speaking of this, be so busy that you haven't had time to watch your favorite TV show in weeks. If you find yourself that there's nothing to watch, there's 99 channels of reality shows, probably 999 channels now of nothing on, or you're scrolling through Netflix and you're like, I can't even find a movie I haven't seen or a TV show I haven't seen, maybe that's a sign, right? Maybe that's a sign that you need to focus more on your future and your family's future and building your business. And again, you can find a way to make it fun and productive and fulfilling. And it doesn't have to be just zoning out, zombieing out in front of the TV. I mean, heck, you can choose to watch TV, to binge watch your stuff after your work's done or during the weekend. Because if you have ever looked up some of the average statistics, maybe I can do it really quick here. The average amount, if I Google search like American average amount of TV, it's like 30 something hours. Here we go. 35.5 hours per week, slightly more than 77 days per year, according to a Nielsen report and Wikipedia. 77 days per year, 2.5 months out of the year completely gone. So most people really only have a 10-month year. So get some of that time back. Be more smart, be smarter, more responsible with your time, and let the TV be what it is. Something that'll always be there, even when you're 80, 90, 100, 120 years old in the nursing home. You'll have plenty of time to binge watch Netflix. For now, build that freaking business. Number 18, work weekends. Don't take them off like everyone else does. This ties back to when Grant would meet people after hours at the car dealership. Work those weekends, and I like to even just put in a couple of hours, a few minutes on a Saturday or a Sunday, because I can sometimes be around anywhere. I can sometimes find the time anyway. And if everyone else is taking that time off, maybe that's my time to get ahead or get caught up. Number 19, write down your goals in the morning and at night, because successful people do this, unsuccessful people don't. So write down what your goals are and rewrite them. That way, every day, twice a day, they'll get stuck in your head and you'll stay on course and you'll know what the big picture is, what that light at the end of the tunnel is, what the heck you're doing all this for. Are you looking to get your house paid off, get X number of rental properties, get X number of customers, get an income goal? Write down those handful of goals, rewrite them. That's huge. Number 20. If you have multiple jobs or streams of income, be looking for those complementary skills. We already unpacked this in that initial summary, but think about that. If you, let's say that you are making ends meet right now, right? You're getting your money right. You're tackling number 2 in this list, and you're working as someone else's virtual assistant. Well, the upside to this thing, is that you're picking up skills that you might then use for your own business later on. Or if you want to work on commission later on, you don't have to be negative about every little thing and say, well, I'm slumming it, I'm taking a job. Well, you have to start somewhere. And having all these podcast interview guests, I know Grant probably won't be one of them, but maybe someday he will be, if we can figure out the right benefit, the right payoff to get to him. Again, maybe it's the appearance fee, I don't know, but you can pick up these skills that will pay off later on. And when I've had these podcast interview guests before, sometimes they create one project or they create one business that completely flops or fails, or they sell it. And you always hear that cliche like, well, you learn from your failures, which is true, but you pick up skills or you figure something out in business number 1 that then pays off in business number 2 or business number 3. So it was never a waste. You always figured out these things that will save you time later on. Number 21, are you discouraged because someone hasn't called you back? Well, how many times have you failed to call someone back? I had someone on as a guest the other day on the show. I've been following up for 2 years, and we finally got our schedules right. And it was, I didn't even realize I was doing it. I just had that person in my spreadsheet to follow up with, and finally we made that sale. And I have people on my list who were subscribers for 5-10 years before they bought one single thing, and then it ended up becoming a recurring coaching client, or ended up buying a high ticket course just because they stuck around, I stuck around. It costs you nothing to keep your websites up, to make that one extra text or that call, to keep someone on your list, to make another consistent email broadcast, to make that other Facebook live stream. I've bought from people's Facebook live stream, not just the Facebook live stream, but I was on live stream number 10 of theirs, 15 of theirs, when I finally bought, including Mr. Grant Cardone. There's a YouTube clip of me and Grant talking where they were doing some kind of a telethon thing, and then I wasn't going to buy the live stream to his event, but then I ended up calling, I ended up buying the, I don't know, $150 live stream, just real easy transaction, just because I finally got hit for the 20th time. And number 22, even if they hate you, they're still talking about you, so just be yourself. We all have our weirdness. That's what makes us stand out, though. So I interviewed a guy named Christopher Lochhead a few episodes back. He has a book called Play Bigger, another book called Niche Down. And the big takeaway I got from him is that, Steve Jobs is kind of a weirdo, but he had a personality, and some people hated him, some people loved him. So why be too careful with that? Why do everyone the disservice of watering yourself down? Be yourself. Be an interesting character. And that's what I like about Grant. He's kind of like a Gary V motivational type of guy. He also has a personality of a Tony Robbins or a Donald Trump. And I'm sure some people hate him. I'm sure some people love him. But either way, they're talking about him. So that is very encouraging. And you can't please everyone. But what you do have control over is whether or not you are hidden in obscurity. So you completely have control over that. Just don't do anything, right? Just don't put yourself out there. Or you can choose to be in that spotlight knowing that you'll suck at first. Look at the early Gary V videos, early Grant Cardone. They're pretty homemade. They're like something like you and I might make. But then you ramp up, you get better over repetition, over time. You take the coaching, you buy the Bradley Lightspeed VT to get the fancy setup. You rent the office space, so you improve incrementally over time. But you have to start somewhere. And if you're looking to start somewhere, if you need that kick in the butt, kick in the pants, then go get the 10X rule. I think out of the Grant Cardone stuff we were talking about, get that book, get the 10X rule. And when I first just kind of jumped up into the Grant Cardone zone and listening to his books, I started, like I said, making phone calls, sending emails, sending the postcards, doing all the things that I used to do but had forgotten to do, making the quick personal videos or send out cards, thank you cards. And I was listening to the audiobook. This point, it was like early 2016. I went to Ryan Deiss's Traffic and Conversions Summit, and I was just talking to some guy in the bar. His name is Dave Koziel. I think the interview with him is robertplank.com/075. And he was like, what are you reading? I'm like, oh, it's Grant Cardone, 10X Rule. And I lit up my phone and opened my Audible app to show what I was in the middle of. And then he took out his phone and he lit it up and he was listening to the same book. So that was pretty cool. That I guess that was right when Grant really was taken off. I mean, he's been taken off again and again, and this other guy, Dave Koziel, I should find out what happened to him, have him back on the show actually, but he said that the Cardone University is pretty freaking good too, where there's like hundreds, thousands of videos on every possible thing that you'd want to know, especially on this super scary, super cheesy subject of selling, which we all need to be doing, whether that is contacting some of those cold prospects in our town. Like, I think there's a video that we don't have time to unpack where I think Grant said something like he's been inside every business within Miami city limits. And someone was like, oh, but you just mean like all the car salesmen in Miami. He was like, no, every single business. So I don't know if that's one of those tall tales or not, but that, again, that's a goal that we should all aspire to. See if you can fill up that calendar. See if you can contact every business of a certain type in town. So contact the people you need to be talking to. Follow up with those customers. That way you don't go down that terrible path of obscurity, of the self-hatred, of the woulda, shoulda, coulda, of the disdain for your customers. So go grab the 10X rule, hop on Amazon, search 10X rule, buy the hardcover, buy the Audible, and maybe even tweet Grant, tell him Robert Plank sent you. Maybe that'll get someone from his office. Maybe we'll get Jared or someone to interview on the show. Fingers crossed, I can only hope. But I think that Grant Cardone is one of these really influential people that you need to be listening to. Maybe it sounds like I'm kissing his ass, whatever, but this has been the Marketer of the Day podcast. This has been the 22 things I learned from Grant Cardone about wealth, mental health, happiness, knowledge, and making money. Don't wait for things to be perfect. Don't wait for your confidence to be at 100%. Don't wait for the fear to go away. Just proceed anyway. Get into that habit of completion, ramp up, and you'll be glad you did. 80% of life is just showing up. Hey, Grant, or someone from Grant's office, if you're listening, nice to talk to you. Hope to hear from you guys again soon. But everyone else out there in podcast land, go grab the 10X Rule on Amazon by Grant Cardone. Join Cardone University. You'll be glad you did. I'm Robert Plank. Thank you and bye now. Go right now to marketeroftheday.com/iTunes to subscribe to the show, listen to other episodes, and rate and review the show.